So as we are waiting for people to sign in, I just wanted to say hi this evening. I'm going to do a more formal introduction just in a little bit. And so some people ask me nowadays if I really have pink hair. And I do, actually. I really do have pink hair. And it's kind of a random thing to start talking about, but might as well. It's just a conditioner, and it goes out every time I wash my hair. The story goes something like this. When I was 18, which is already 20 years ago or so, I really wanted to have pink hair, but at that time I don't think you could just do a conditioner. It was more permanent, so I was really scared. Like I didn't dare to do it. And then eventually, as the years passed, and they came up with this solution, and I again started to think, oh, I want to have pink hair. I took a chance. So now I have pink hair, sort of, which I'm really enjoying. And as we'll be talking about today, more about how to move through darkness. In any case, having pink hair gives me a little boost of joy every time I pass in the mirror to remember that I do indeed have pink hair. So that's how that story goes. I'm sure we all have our little things and things that we secretly wished for, or we wished for we didn't dare to do. And then I usually say this thing like, instead of asking yourself why you would do things, maybe better to ask why not, and see what kind of arguments you come up with then. Why not? And in most cases, if you're a very sensible person, and I'm sure you have all your arguments lined up why you wouldn't do something, it's interesting to kind of challenge yourself with asking why not. Anyway, so I see that time is there, and we have more people signed in, so we'll just go ahead and start. So we'll be logged on here for about an hour, perhaps not even an hour, but we'll see how far that goes. So thank you everyone for joining this evening. It's very, very cool that you guys logged on, and I'm assuming and thinking that is of course because you have interest in this topic of how to move through darkness, or how to move more skillfully through those dark days. And in this period that we have going on, and almost behind us, hopefully, with social distancing, might have been that more people have gotten more triggered into darkness in that sense, or the dark moods, or feeling low in different ways. So increase the volume, someone asked. Yes, let me see how I can do that. Well, it is fully increased now. Does it help if I come closer? Can you let me know if the volume is better now? Anyone? Give me a chat. Does it work better? The volume? I'm going to check here. Okay, great. So there's a little bit of different. Some people say they can hear totally fine. Others will use their headphones. Okay, I'm see if I can speak up a little bit in any case. Let me know if I'm yelling too loud. Okay, thank you guys. So yeah, so this thing about darkness, we're gonna dive right into it. And I wanted to give you guys like 3 specific things or aspects that I, both from my practice, meaning my work with my clients and my patients, but also in my own experience, there are three things that I believe is very beneficial, and some things that you could always engage in actually when you feel this darkness creep up on you. And hopefully these are things that you will be able to implement in yourself in a way, or integrate, so that you can really reach for them um, all the time, so that you really can kind of build your emotional stamina in a way, or emotional strength. Yeah, emotional strength. So we'll dive more into those. So I want to give you those three things, and along the way we'll be talking about grief as well. And because this is also a topic that people ask me about, and sometimes, um, or very often as well, actually, this comes up as part of moving through or transformational processes, that there is grief ongoing or not really addressed, which is kind of turned into a hindrance in a way, or an obstacle of how to be able to move onwards. So these are the things we're going to look into today. So firstly, I just wanted to, I keep glancing down on my papers, my notes. So just so you know, I have a cheat sheet here. Yeah, just for those of you who don't know me so much or so well, I'm Kristin. Obviously, I'm sitting right now in Bodø in the north of Norway, and I'm trained clinical psychologist and yoga therapist and mindfulness facilitator. So that means that I'm a little bit over the average interested in the wisdom practices, so to speak, the Eastern practices as part of transformational processes, and definitely into psychology for sure. And yeah, it's recent that I started to go online more like this. So still just wanted to make that as a note, like it's a little bit new for me. So we'll just see how it goes. So I really encourage you guys to just kind of drop in with in the chat if you have questions. I'll see if I can follow up with them along the way, or at least towards the end of this session. All right. So yeah, when we're going to talk about this darkness, or what these dark days might be, it's a good idea to kind of define what is it then? What is it made of, this darkness? So it can be different for everyone, of course, and definitely different for everyone how it's triggered. However, there are some commonalities, of course, of how we might feel, the quality, sort of the fabric of the darkness, of how we feel, the experience of being there. And then, so most of the time, you will feel this kind of a drop in energy. You will feel lower and less energetic, both physically but also mentally, so that there's like a drainage of energy. And then in addition, there can come things depending on how long it's ongoing. You can feel perhaps a shift in appetite, that you're not so hungry, or some people get very hungry, or very wanting to have more sweets, for example, or particular kind of foods. You do feel like a clear shift there. You might feel negative thoughts kind of creeping up on you, or being more expressed. So there could be worrisome thoughts, negative thoughts about yourself, your self feeling could be kind of, amped up on the volume. And then in addition, you can get this kind of by effect of all this, like the quality of your mind or your thoughts is that there will be like a rumination, so they keep going again and again and again. It's said that we think the same thought or the same thoughts, just a few, like 1,000 times every day. And that's pretty, like, if you start thinking about that and noticing, like, okay, so what are those thoughts, or what is that thought that keep going again and again and again, like, it was very interesting to pay attention to that, be more aware, what is it exactly, the contents of what's going on in there, um, in the sense of having more awareness to, not to be more aware of the stories that's going on, but just to be aware of what kind of content or topic is it that wants your attention. And then to also notice this quality of your mind and the fabric, like I said, the fabric of this darkness, like how does it express actually ruminating thoughts, lower energy. And another kind of feeling could be like this sense of that you can't be bothered. And this can really kind of spiral down to more like can't be bothered. You start feeling like hopelessness, or it really spirals down. It goes into this sense of meaninglessness. So that's when it's really going far down. And this is, of course, devastating, and really, it's also part of this spiral that can bring you even further down, of course. But the bottom line in any case is to stay aware of this, the fabric of how does it actually express within you, and then how do you cope with it. What do you do about it? Do you just lay down in your bed under your blanket, or do you just sit there and like, what do you actually do in those days? So that's what we're going to go a little bit more into, what kind of things you or that is recommended that you engage in as more skillful means. And yeah, so now when we have kind of described what is this darkness, yeah, this is how you can recognize that this darkness is there. You see it in your thought patterns, in your body, you can feel it, and the sensations and how you feel, right? So you could be like overwhelmed, or like negative, so-called negative feelings, like sadness, aloneness. This is also something that a lot of people describe, that when they start to feel in this dark space, is that they start to feel alone, or a sense of aloneness. Doesn't mean that they have to be physically alone, but it's just this sensation. Also here is this amped up the volume on this sensation of being alone in the world, or being alone or not understood. And this is a very important point that I'm going to address a little later in one of these things that you can engage in. So, so we have that, right? So we can understand, we have a sense of what that darkness is, and how we can kind of tap into this fabric and recognize it. And another interesting fact is that in our society, most of the time we are not like raised to, or it's not so much modeled in the society of how to process this kind of a darkness, which is really weird, right? Because it's obviously it's human, and it's very much a part of different processes that you will go through. Sometimes, of course, it can and become more prominent and a real big problem for your daily functioning and for your overall functioning. This is, of course, when you hopefully go and seek help. And then, but still, it's like it's part of this human experience, right? To move through this different phases, and especially in this time that we are now. So before we dive further into it, another part which is interesting to look at when we talk about this darkness is that we have to understand, okay, so we're not kind of raised to process these negative feelings and how to hold this darkness, but we're very much trained to the other part, is happiness, right? So this is something we get stuck on. We're like, happy, yes, I want to be happy, I want to feel happy. And we have this idea like all the time that this is like what is it in any case, and then this is what we want to achieve. um, so this is of course very interesting when you start looking into the wisdom teachings, because they have like a whole different approach to happiness and how to define it, au contraire to what we do here in the West. So if we would define it, we'd be very curious to hear right now how you guys would define it. So if you want, you can pop it in there into the chat. In any case, happiness would be like the um, when there's no negative feeling. Sometimes this is how it's defined, when there's no presence of negative feeling or negative thinking. Or it could be defined more as a spontaneous um, expression of joy. Um, what are the things? Um, I think most of the time, how we look at how it's defined is that you get this idea that you're just like in this mode all the time that has this spontaneity and joy. And if you look at the theory about happiness and what has been found also in contemporary theories, that what we wait when we talk about feeling happy is this having a sense of meaning. So having a sense of meaning in our everyday life, about who we are, that it makes sense to us in a way. And this is very closely linked to a sense um, of having a function um, in your society or in your smaller group. So in your microenvironment, for example, within your group of loved ones or your family, or in a bigger sphere, like amongst friends, and then even wider in the society overall. So with work. So this sense of having a function, that we have a meaning in a social setting or social grouping, or in a relational dynamic of some sort. This is what is found in a lot of the research, that we attribute happiness this way. So when we lose contact with those aspects, that's when this sense of happiness start to disappear. So there you can see again how this darkness, or when it all actually comes back to in a way relational dynamics, like how we experience ourselves um, in relation to someone. Yeah. So this happiness, this sense of happiness, can disappear when we start to question, our functioning in relation to others, or how we experience that as meaningful. So if you are in a dynamic at work, for example, and you start to lose the sense of meaning in what you're doing, this is very fastly can spiral you out of feeling this happiness, and or spiral you into the feeling more low, and feeling this darkness coming over you, feeling this depressive thoughts or depressive moods come over you even. So I think it was Joseph Campbell. I really love him. I discovered him recently. I just really love his work and his books. And I think he defined it something like the human experience is, in his opinion, is much more was about this having an experience of being alive rather than finding the meaning of life. And I really love that phrasing, because it's really that. And I also see this, how I work with my clients and my patients, at these little moments, where we all kind of keep, honing in on, those moments, when you have those moments with someone, where you just have this experience of aliveness. Yeah. And it's in a sense of yeah, where you really both of course feel seen and heard, but really like a sense of an experience, a sensation of being alive. So that could be something for you to inquire for yourself, like for the next few days, like what is it exactly at those moments? How is it that you feel this experience of being alive? It's very, very curious. I find, like how do you experience this aliveness within yourself when it happens? And isn't that closely linked to how you would feel or define yourself as being happy? Well, very interesting little experiment you could do for yourself. Just check it out and keep aware about it in the next few days. So, okay, I'm rambling on like usual. Okay, so now we kind of defined a little bit more what is the fabric of this darkness, what is this fabric of happiness. And we have this idea we want to be, rather want to be in happiness rather than this darkness. But then, going to be all dramatic about it, but indeed, yes, because like I said, our society hasn't really raised us to hold ourselves in the darkness. However, it is a very natural reaction most of the time to what you experience. So, the first thing I'm going to give you in these three aspects of what to engage in fully is this: it's kindness. So, it sounds like, okay, kindness, easy. So kindness is, I like to define it as, being your own best friend, but like, especially in those moments when the darkness kind of, want to hold you and kind of tug you down. So this kindness and being your own best friend goes a little bit something like this. You can imagine the critical dialogue that you have within, like I was saying in the beginning, like this one thought or a few thoughts that you have 1,000 times every day, and in the darker days they are usually more negatively looped, right? So when you notice that, what are those critical thoughts? What is that inner critical dialogue? And why on earth, right? This is where it comes in. Why on earth are you being so critical and negative to yourself? Why are you bashing yourself, right? So what I said before is like, this is a little bit the chemistry of this darkness that comes over you. On the other hand, when you stay aware, like, okay, this is how it goes, these are the kind of thoughts and this is the dialogue I have towards myself right now. Would I say this to my own best friend? I don't think so. I don't hope so in any case. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't talk to your own best friend like that. And this is why, really cultivating this kindness towards yourself, obviously, when you do it apart from those times when you feel depressed or this darkness come over you, then you will have it more readily accessible for you. But there is this attitude of kindness, of friendliness towards yourself about who you are or how you feel you are more, um, the way you're thinking, the way you're feeling. So this is an important point, right? Because we could have the idea that, with kindness and really like cultivating this attitude of kindness, from loving kindness and compassion, understanding will be like, slap yourself in the face, like get out of it, get out of this state and the mode that you're in. It's like, no, it's like when you are feeling low, when you're feeling this darkness kind of draping over you, then is to hold yourself there and to say, hey, it's fine, you know, is fine. I understand, and it's going to be good. It's always going to be better. Yeah. So for those of you who followed some of my teachings before, I always talk about this ease and unease and how that kind of, it always keeps going like this. Sometimes you feel good, sometimes you don't feel so good, and it just goes on like this. Is a natural balance. Obviously, when something more severe happened in your life, like this lockdown that has been occurring globally, um, that's a very clear instigator of feeling off, and could easily trigger you into feeling more depressed. However, this is the moment to say, it's fine. This is a natural reaction, actually. It's a very natural reaction to something big occurring in your life, big shift, big transformation. Uh, Even, again, I'm going to refer to Joseph Campbell just because I'm doing some research. I'm reading a lot from him lately. But this also from yoga philosophy. It's like you have the destruction and then the transformation and then creation. It's this Shiva energy. And Joseph Campbell would put in more in this hero's journey, and he would say like, okay, so then you descend into the abyss. So very dramatic. However, I like this imagery. So it's like you're descending into this abyss, like Dante's Inferno. It's like going into hell. But then, like he put it, it's like it has to happen. This is also what yogi philosophy talks about. So kind of this is the natural rhythm of being alive in a way. So you will go into this processes like this, and you will come into this abyss, or you will experience this darkness, and then afterwards the transformation can happen. And then you hone in on whatever that is that kind of lifts you. Could be insights, or things that would lift you to the next steps, towards what Joseph Campbell would phrase as rebirth. Yeah, I think you all know this also from the Buddhist theory and philosophy. So this is, I like this imagery, and it's understandable, and in contemporary psychology it makes a lot of sense as well, right? So that brings us over to the next aspect that I wanted to give you guys. So this is the second aspect is patience. So now the first one, I'm just going to spend a little bit more time on the first one, because I wanted to add some stuff there in regards of what you can do to practice this kindness towards yourself. So there's formal practices of what you know as metta practices, the loving kindness practices. Um, those could be way too much, especially when it's ongoing, this darkness or this feeling depressed. So then it's just to do some simple um, self-talk or self-regulative talk, self-regular regulative. Sorry, this is where my English skills sometimes just stops. Sorry about that. So this inner dialogue that you keep having all the time with critical, could be critical or negative talk, self dialogue. So you want to switch it up. So even if you don't really believe it, and this is also an important point, even if you don't feel it, you don't feel like you want to be your own best friend, you'll be like, yeah, I just, why are you doing things you're doing? And you're in this negative thinking loop and just like beating yourself up for whatever reason. And then you remember it's like, oh, I have to speak positively to myself. That sucks. But it's possible, and it's like, you just like really concentrate, and sometimes it could help to write it down. It's like you say to yourself, it's okay, I am my own best friend, this shall too pass, I understand why I'm feeling how I'm feeling, and I will just keep on feeling whatever it is that I'm feeling, and it will move on when it's ready. So you guys practicing a lot of yoga, meditation, You probably know this from experience that any sensation within us, including any thoughts, any emotion, any sensation in the body, it will, you know how it arises. At one point it arises and it passes again. It arises and passes. Sometimes it arises and the story's on, but then it eventually does pass. It always passes. It shifts. So to remind yourself of that also when the intensity is high, when it's ongoing. Yeah, when the shit is ongoing, when the darkness is taking over, remembering this, remind yourself is okay. It will pass. I understand why I feel the way I feel, and I'm going to allow it. I'm just going to surrender to this feeling. And this is an important point because often, we might have this feeling that an emotion, especially those negative ones, why it's defined as that, I have to figure it out. But it's like, when the sadness, anger, all these frustrations, when they are there, especially when they are high intensity, it feels like they're just taking over, but that's fine. This is what I said about how society hasn't raised us to process it fully. And this logs on to grief, actually. And a lot of people say, like, if I start crying, or if I start to feel this feeling of whatever it is here, I'm scared it will never pass. Or I'm scared I'm going to be stuck in it forever. I'm going to fall apart. I'm going to go mental. It's never going to stop. This sadness is going to take over. So this is, again, what I refer to, this arising and passing. No one has ever, broke because they started to cry. Feeling these feelings fully, feeling anger, feeling sadness, shame, even, it's like everything. It's like how to hold yourself in this. And it's important to hold yourself in it, to surrender to it. So why would people phrase it like that? Like, I'm scared if I start to express it or feel it. It's how we identify so hardcore to how we feel, right? It's the same, comes back to when I define this happiness and darkness. It's like we just want this happiness and have the idea that happiness is the key. We want to be, this must be it, right? Without really looking into what is it really over time. Same goes for darkness. Like this whole this very big stigma, like, oh no, we don't want that. But here again, and this is also referred to in the Buddhist philosophy, actually, about how to maintain this skillful view of what is either, right? Because this is our understanding of, this inner dialogue that you might have, like why you want to, why it could be difficult to cultivate this kindness to yourself, that maybe you feel you don't deserve it, that you should more identify with that darkness. You want to stay there. So there's like this ongoing dynamic, pretty intricately going on as you are in that space, wherever it is. But what is very true, and we know this also from research, is how this attitude you have towards the contents of your mind, the quality of your mind, and the stories, not the least, is what's going to help you shift. Yeah, so the attitude towards yourself, basically, or what's moving within yourself in that moment, that's what's going to help you shift. All right, so what I said is that you could do pretty simple practice. Even if you don't feel it in that very moment, you're going to be your own best friend. You can say, it's fine, I understand you're having a natural reaction to whatever is going on in your life in that moment. So this is in a way to kind of take serious, but not so serious at the same time, how you're feeling. Yeah, allow it to be. So then I said the second one is patience. So patience is also, again, an understanding, but patience is really also something you want to cultivate. Sounds so easy, but then it is this patience is that, like I usually say, you feel in a certain way, or you feel depressed, or you start to feel that this kind of hopelessness, or it's like taking over and draping you in this veil, and then you're like, I don't want it, it's not good, I shouldn't feel like this. And then to really cultivate that understanding is to say to yourself, when as you're practicing the kindness, friendliness towards yourself, um, to be patient. Again, it reflects back to knowing that anything that arises will pass again, but also the knowing that there are different stages as you move through a transformational process. So transformation or change, shifting from feeling the dark days or the depression versus the happiness, it doesn't happen like that. You know? There's this shift happening, and this again also brings us over to this how to grieve, or how to really hold yourself in these negative, so-called negative feelings. What I said about surrendering. And it's to really, that's how you do it, right? That's how you do the surrendering, is to remind yourself to be patient, to understand that to be able to move through this darkness is to remember that whatever you're feeling right now serves a purpose in the transformational process you're in. It's a stepping stone towards making you ready to take action. So it means that everything you're feeling and thinking is you actually considering back and forth, is it worth it to move, to transform? Yeah. But it's happening on an unconscious level, of course. But that's why you can feel stuck in this, people describe it as chaotic thinking, chaos thinking, and ruminating thought. They keep ping-ponging back and forth because there's a careful consideration happening. And of course, it's not recommended to stay with those ruminating thoughts by yourself. So this is why, I always say, like, at one moment when if you feel like this darkness really taking over you, and you start to feel like this sense of meaninglessness, hopelessness really being amped up, then you ask for help. And I always say ask for help before, rather earlier than later. Yeah. Because it's, even if it's from a friend, or, because it's in those conversations, when you put it out loud, can help to sort out what's going on actually. And this is part of this patience of moving you through to the next stage of this transformation process. So again, just to recap here, when you're experiencing these dark days, practicing kindness towards yourself and practicing this attitude of patience, reminding yourself this also needs to be here. Yeah. And this, what I said about grieving, it's also, again, back to how our society is not really set up. We're not really set up for processing what is difficult, or the so-called negative emotions. However, this is part of our, if I may say it like this, how your spirit, if this is something you connect with, if it resonates with you, how your spirit kind of hold up in this embodied presence that is you, right? So, or just the core of you, or your sense of self, like how do you how you're able to stay in these moments, how you hold yourself in this grieving. And grieving is, you know, this patience is not giving into this, take it away, change it, let my life be different, or let me feel differently, or immediate. No, it's like being right there with whatever is present, any sensations that are present within you, not to drape yourself more into it, but it's just to observe it and see why is it here, right? So I always find this useful to ask, like, why is something alive within at a certain moment? It could be just triggered by a thought or a smell even, or, you know, any, it can be triggered by anything. But why something is alive at a given moment, what is it trying to express in you? So whatever that is very much connected to your boundaries, your needs. So many people challenge, like struggle with what the needs, what are my needs, or, you know, what are my boundaries. So this is if we start to really listen into the sensations that are present in a given moment, especially when it's high intensity on it. What is alive within? What if you just stay there, hold yourself in it, because you know it's going to pass. You know that it's an important part of this process you're in, and you are being your own best friend and understanding and more curious about this. Is like, how does this feel? Oh, it feels like this. Whoa. Maybe it takes you into a roller coaster of emotional outbursts of crying, or, I don't know, yelling. I remember one colleague had actually, it's not so usual, I haven't heard this so often, but he had actually recommended to a male client to go into the woods and slam on to a tree, like really, like, and yell and like roar and of anger, frustration. Maybe a good idea. I don't know, if you're near the woods, just make sure that there's not so many people around. But there is this expressing whatever is alive. And in the regards of this expressing these emotions, also with the grief, is that it often stays on longer. It's not just one outburst of your emotion and then it's done. It can go on and on. But here also to understand that this is a natural reaction to whatever you have encountered in your life, or what is present in your life in that moment. Or perhaps it's something old that stays on and it comes to the surface. It's trying to say something to you in regards of what is needed to be expressed, that you need to um, take this extra compassion to yourself. Because it's always like this, you know, any experience we have throughout a lifetime, you know, you can put a lid on it, or, you know, however you want to say, put it on the rug, forget about it, or it wasn't so present in that moment, but then it comes back at a later stage, and it offers you something. It has something to offer you, to maybe teach you about yourself, how you deal with yourself, how you deal with the world or your relationships, but it has something to offer you. So it's to pay attention to that. Why would something come up again? So what I said earlier about, for example, now what we are experiencing, this lockdown and social distancing, I think it's been a little bit different in each country. And I joke about that here in the north. You know, this is, you know, social distancing is part of our culture. It's still really, really weird. You know, it's so weird, and it can really make us ask a lot of questions about how we live. And the future, of course, which is some things seem very unclear. So for some people in this moment, they're actually having a kind of a trauma response to what's happening. So then, of course, feeling these dark days, depressed moods, all these things that I talked about in the beginning of this session, it's like, of course, you're going to feel all those things. And it could trigger anxiety, it can trigger a lot of negativity and really throw you off with your daily functioning. So this is something to be very understanding of. Trauma response or just any reaction, actually. So this grief that I'm talking about is like, this is actually you taking seriously whatever is present in you. There's a lot, like these negative thoughts keep going back again, again. Why? What is it? What is the sensation in your body? Is it sadness? Is it anger? Is it some kind of frustration, confusion, whatever it is? You're not going to go into the story, but you could just notice that it is there. It is there. It is alive. And it's asking of you to relate to it in one way or the other. So that is the grief. The grief is this, you can see the grief can come out as depressed moods or darkness within you with all what comes along with that. It can really trigger a lot of physical reactions, can throw off your sleep rhythm, appetite, all of these things that we discussed before. It can really make you feel off. And then is to really pay attention. It's like, hey, okay, it's here. How can I best serve myself in this period? How can I hold myself in this period? Yes, you can practice this kindness and the patience. And then the last thing I wanted to give to you today is what I call togetherness. So this is something, all of these actually are from the well-being prescriptions from my book Inner Spark, which comes out in English, yay, and Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, unfortunately, later this year. Anyway, togetherness. So this is really important. And it's really important. And there's so much to say about it. Obviously, you will feel more supported if you reach out to someone. If you have your loved ones around you, you just spend time with people in general, it is going to make you feel better. However, most people tend to withdraw when they start to feel depressed and feel down. So this is, of course, if you need space, of course, take the space. But then in general, it's like if you can keep on engaging in this, what I said, when you're not feeling low or depressed or in this darkness, is that when you then start to feel there, oh, okay, this is what I can do to feel better. So that is, of course, what I said. In social distancing, it's not so easy to go and see people, but you can phone and you can have contact in different ways. Just really make sure that you stay in contact with people in any possible way. Also because, when you are in this darkness, it can be more self-centering in the sense that you're just so preoccupied with this ruminating thought. So it's really good actually to just hear someone else talk about something or themselves, because it can help you to shift your focus of attention a little bit. And have a little sip. And yeah, another part though, besides the physical, presence of others, and besides the fact of just, hanging out with others, being social, and it makes you feel you have some kind of experience of aliveness, in a dynamic, in a relationship. But also, of course, this in this aspect of the togetherness is to know that you are better, stronger with others. So again, what I said earlier about asking for help, ask for help or ask for support earlier than later. Another very important aspect here is this sense of aloneness that tend to amp up when you're feeling depressed, or you feel this darkness kind of holding you. And then this sense of aloneness is not necessarily because you are alone or because someone are not seeing you or hearing you, even though that's how it might feel. But this sense of aloneness is really part of the fabric of this darkness. And what to do about it is engaging in intimate relationship with someone in the sense of really opening up. So there are many ways of doing that, and y'all have different boundaries in that sense. So it's not about just opening up and telling everyone everything. That's not what it is. But it's about sharing your experience of being alive. Yeah. And actually, I attended a course earlier this year. It was a wonderful course, and there was a quote there. Can I remember her name? No. Anyway, it was phrased out like this: when you feel felt, you exist. So this is really the antidote of this aloneness. And I really believe also in the long term, this is the antidote of this darkness as well, because it's going to make you equipped to hold yourself more skillfully in this darkness. So when you feel felt, that's when you exist. So another person listening to you or mirroring you or even debating you doesn't matter. But this experience of feeling felt, and this is why togetherness is so potent. And I keep coming back to this again and again, and I have a whole big, the first part of my book is actually about this as well, because it's something about how our society is set up. It's like being an individualist has, in one way or the other, that's sort of been the path to go in this Western society. It's not the path to go. Yes, you can take your space, or you can, if you need to do that or do things alone, that's great. That's really awesome, of course, to be able to do that. But that is not the same thing, right? So this undoing this aloneness is really about how you can engage more skillfully for yourself. Like, how do you relate not only to yourself, but in those relationships and those dynamics with others? This is really how to go into this transformation, right? To be and hold yourself, whatever might happen, whatever you might feel. If it's one day of darkness, a couple of days of darkness, or if it's more depressed moods over time, if it's a real grief going on or big trauma response to something that's really thrown you off, this is it. How to hold yourself with kindness, with patience, but in togetherness, to undo this sense of aloneness. Really to tune into yourself so that you can tune in to the others as well. So I see that time has flown, as it tends to do when I start rambling on. So I just wanted to give a big thanks to everyone that has been here along the way. I wanted to give you a little something for inquiry or reflection for yourself for the next few days. And that is, just taking a little check on my cheat sheet, to think about, what do you do usually when this darkness comes upon you? What do you usually do? And how does that serve you? And is there one thing that we talked about this evening that you could bring with you and integrate and see how that would work for you? All right. So before I say goodbye, I'm just going to see if anyone have any questions towards the end. If you have any questions, just pop them here in the chat, or you could even do it here in this Q&A. I think that works differently if you have a question that you don't want anyone else to see. And if there's no questions coming up, you guys know where to find me, and you know I always want to hear from you, so you can always drop me an email or DM me through my Instagram or wherever you might find me or follow me. And that's where my voice went. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, and I wish you all a very good evening. Bye. Thank you.